This is the film The Man with the Golden Arm, starring Frank Sinatra and directed by Otto Preminger. This first still shows the star of the film, Frankie Machine, played by Frank Sinatra, walking down the street, a newly freed man from prison. In jail, he has cleaned up his act from a heroin addict and decided to live his life differently than before. You can see it's a noir film here because the gritty setting and the hero stand in stark contrast at first. Also, he walks right past the cops, who are always prevalent players in noir films, and you get a sense that the topic is going to be gritty and illegal and all the things that noir films really strive to be. Here is a close-up of Frankie's face as he's looking through a window into his old hangout. The camera shows the sign that says beer to establish the setting, then it pans around to illustrate that Frankie is now seeing them from outside the window looking in. He's separate, he's no longer one of them. And this close-up shows his emotion really well also. In this scene, Frankie's watching this one-armed poor man's eyes follow this drink like a carrot for a rabbit. And the poor man is just taunted and forced to dance just to get this drink. And it's the first real introduction to the cynical film noir theme of addiction. Then it shows Frankie again, and it's a close-up of him, and he's just shaking his head and smiling like he remembers that he was once old enough to dance just for a fix. But he's not really there anymore, and this theme of recovery starts to come out a little bit. In this shot, what really stands out to me is the asymmetry between Frankie and his old dealer, Robert Strauss, because they're not on the same side anymore, so the director purposely sets them apart like he did with the window in the bar scene. Here, Frankie's old girlfriend, Josh, played by Eleanor Parker, is shown to be pretending to be crippled and using it to hold Frankie as close as possible. He stands back in the shot and dusties himself up to show that he's trying to make something up of himself, as she is pulling away to the far side of the shot, front and center, like she wants him to follow him. This is where she stands up and walks perfectly fine. The music dips low and you realize she's been deceitful. Also, she starts on one side of the frame and makes her way across again. The shadows shift with her.
Having you near, in spite of a warning voice that comes in the night and repeats how it yells in my ear.
This scene to me really represents Sasha's total insanity and her need for attention compared to Frankie's character. She pulls out a book entitled My Scrapbook of Fatal Accident, and it's filled with pictures of the accident that killed her husband and supposedly left her in this wheelchair. And she's showing it off to the doctor with a smile and explaining the pictures, while Frankie's pacing back and forth questioning his methods and actually realizing he's a cop. You start to notice that she's always front and center compared to Frankie, who's back and off to the right. And afterwards the camera zooms in on her troubled face and the doctor's just sideways expression. This shot is a close-up of Frankie's eyes as he finally gives in and takes a hit of heroin. His face is tilted and the camera moves around him before it settles in to illustrate his high. You sort of see what he sees as he drifts away. And next he's shown with Sash because she's part of what pushes him over the edge, I think.
I've got you under my skin.
This is one of my favorite shots because the camera faces upwards towards Frankie when he stands at the top of the staircase, leaving a 24-hour dealing range. He walks towards the camera and it closes in on him, and he wipes a tear away. And then it cuts to a long shot of him walking away. The stairs and the streets look grimy and he's exhausted and he's finally dirty too. Where at the beginning of the film, he stood in contrast. Now he blends in with the setting and you sort of see how he used to fit in and he's starting to fit in again. You see his degradation of it all.
But why should I try to resist when, baby, I know so?
This shot just furthers what I said about the degradation. I mean, You see his utter exhaustion and Strauss's character standing over his shoulder, whispering in his ear, like the proverbial devil on his shoulder. The shot is asymmetrical and the background is almost black with shadows. So like most noir films, there's not a whole ton of the use of natural light, just because it's such a serious scene.
You never can win. Use your mentality.
In this shot, you get a lot more symmetry than you've been getting for the entire film, but almost all the men stand in one shadow or another, and it kind of illustrates how the odds are stacked against Frankie, metaphorically and physically, with all the men standing behind him pushing in on him. It really shows how far he's fallen as he convinces himself that this is better for his audition and helps him in his chance to make something of himself. This shot is just kind of funny because there's a spotlight literally on Frankie as he's dealing in this game. And it's kind of skewed and to me looks like almost a sideways halo or a police interrogation light. And the men are standing behind him like he's either Jesus or they're playing some sort of bad cop, good cop. And behind them is just utter blackness while the camera's remaining straight on them until the fight actually happens where it follows the action. Here is a scene of contrast. You see Frankie hear the charges against him and the trouble he's put his friends in, and he puts his fist in his mouth in a kind of cliche gesture, but you really see Sinatra's raw side of acting here, because maybe some life realizations can be made in time to fix things. You know, he's nice and center in the shot, and he's symmetrical, but his hair is messy, and he doesn't look clean-shaven because he's a mess, but he finally knows it.
Use your mentality. Step up, wake up to reality.
This is my favorite character in the movie, Sparrow, played by Arnold Stang, and he's kind of a little brother character to Frankie. So here, while he's being questioned by the big bad police, it's very noir because even though addiction is really the bad guy, they're still standing menacingly over this harmless petty criminal. And Sparrow looks so scared for Frankie and doesn't want to make things worse that you're really focusing on his pain with the background being so plain and the scene being fairly well lit. It's just dramatic and raw from the aspect of his emotion. In this last still, you see Frankie finally fawning over Zosh the way she wants, and you see right after this his life is able to fall back in place, you know, pun intended, once she's gone, because he's free to be with the woman he actually loves and he's clean away from influences, but he knows it's always going to be a battle for him now. His body language is obvious that she's dead, and he looks stricken, but for once, he looks clean and sharp again against the background, and he looks better than the beginning, even though she's sprawled across the ground and he's...
I tried so not to give in. I said to myself, this affair never will go so well.